Good morning. This is Jim Whitehead of All Power Group. I've had the opportunity of doing many things in my life. One of the longest jobs I had was running and owning a generator company. And then later we added solar power opportunities. I'm going to be sharing with you the process of what you need to do if you would like to become a generator company. The first part will go into some of the simple things that you need to sit down and think about before you even decide you're going to do this. And that is what this part one is for. I have slides that go into business plans, kind of marketing to see if your area is potentially a good opportunity for generator installations. That said, in most cases, most areas, unless you don't have electricity at all, you will have a good opportunity with the generator business. After I go through the beginning of housekeeping of making a plan, I will really then get down to what it really takes to actually do the business. So let's get going on the nitty gritty so at least you get started. Okay, let's say you're in Orlando, Florida. You need to look at the demand for generators, the demand for solar. You need to look at competition in the area. The good news with competition, you will learn from them, either the good or bad. You will also have it where you know what you need to do to be better. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about down the road is related to customer service. Customer service is somewhat logical if you have logic, but I'm going to be honest with you, most companies do not really practice good customer service. It's a lot easier to work with a customer than work against a customer, but you'll find that out. One of my dear friends, Louis Foyer, Dynamic Seminars, one of his biggest sayings, and I'm quoting him, is customers work with businesses that are easy to work with. So remember that. If you don't have somebody great answering the phone, you end up saying, leave a message. It just does not put forth what we consider good customer service. So anyway, back to analyzing and working through to see if your area is good for these services. Generally speaking, most areas are, so that's the good news. Now, a business plan, and I've got to be honest, I didn't do any of this. So don't think it's like, well, do what I did and you're going to be successful. I didn't do any of this because I didn't know any better. And I'm talking back in the end of 2005. I had been a healthcare worker, respiratory therapist, and I had not run my own business. So, in essence, I didn't know really what to do. I didn't know how to start it. I didn't know how to keep it going. And to be honest with you, and this is why I'm doing this, to save you, 2006 was the worst time of my life because I did not know the generator business. I had no licensing. And back then, because generator installations and the businesses were relatively new, short time before that, most of the generators were industrial that would be going into, large businesses. I would say in approximately 2004, that's when, and in this case, Generac developed a line of home standby generators. And when we had a Hurricane Wilma, and at the time I was living in South Florida, Davie, Florida. I'm now in Naples, Florida. We had this Wilma, and folks were out of power for up to 13 days. And the grid is even worse than it was back then. So there's no real logic to say, oh, everything has gotten so good we don't lose power. Well, that's just not true. So with 2006 being a terrible year, another thing that happened is no one would help me. No one would sit me down and say, no, what you're doing is not good. What you're doing, that's right, that's wrong. This is how you do it. All they were willing to do was to take money and basically make up excuses not to do the work. One of the companies that I was around, that I started working with, they had a combination of 400 to 500 installations. That's almost impossible, especially back then when the building departments didn't know really that much about the installation of generators. So they weren't good at permitting them, and permits could take up to 8 months. So having a bunch of jobs like that would have where you, would not have an opportunity to even get them done. And then what happens, and in this one company in particular, they had about 400 Home Depot generator installation orders. And when they found that it was not moving along very well, very quickly, and as you know, Home Depot will give you your money back. That's what happened. This particular company, and it basically put them out of business. They found that many of the jobs that were somewhat in the process, it wasn't that they just were sitting around looking at the money, but bottom line, the getting a job done was very, very hard and very lengthy time period. So a customer that's 6 months in, and a bunch of them started saying to Home Depot, I want my money back. So when they went to this company and said, okay, we've got 300 customers that basically want their money back, that pretty much destroyed the company. And even to this day, and I'm talking 18 years, I never looked to do a bunch of jobs for the big box retailers like Lowe's and Home Depot. Nothing against them, but they would not pay very well. Their thought was, well, if you are our main installer, you will have many, 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 many opportunities, and for money and so on and so forth. But the problem, even today, you can't do them very fast. So, and you've got to pay people, and you've got to have parts. I can go on and on and on. So having it where you think you have made it when you're taking care of all the big box, it doesn't work. And just one other point with that, they would, and let's say it costs you, and I'm using a silly number, but let's say it costs you $2,000 to install a generator. That's not the way it is, but just doing round numbers. And they would say, okay, well, since we're going to give you a bunch of jobs, we're going to pay you $1,000 in installation. And you'd say, well, that doesn't meet my costs. It doesn't make any sense. I can't afford to do a generator for that amount. And they'd say, well, you got to look at it. You're going to be getting volume. Well, the catch-22 is you can't do volume in most cases. And it really also depends on where you are in the country. South Florida is the strictest in a sense of planning and zoning, setbacks, wind issues, because, you know, the hurricane amount of wind that we had to deal with in the sense of anchoring generators was 175 miles per hour. So it wasn't where you could just come along and deliver a generator and put it on some stones. You had to put it on a generator pad and anchor it accordingly, and that would be inspected. And in the permit process, you would be submitting, you know, engineering that shows how you're anchoring that generator will cover it, in the sense of if you have basically 175 mile an hour winds. Customers would ask me, they'd say, what if my generator moves? And I'd say, well, your house is much larger, much higher, probably not anchored like that. It probably won't make that much difference if it's catastrophic. And I'm talking, you know, category 5, category 4. That's when all the bets are off. So the biggest thing that starting a generator business is having, you know, budgeting, sales forecasts, and projected financial statements. And a lot of folks started businesses that just were not geared to actually do the business, and or they didn't have somebody that was there to help them financially and also getting the work done. Now, as you're seeing on the right side of this slide is, and this is not where I received these licenses before I started the business. So it isn't where you'd say, well, you got to do licensing before you start the business. No, there's, depending on your structure, in other words, you need to do two big areas in the construction. One is electrical. So you have to have a licensed electrician. I worked with a gentleman by the name of Kenny Brown, Brown Electrical. He did all my electrical. The licenses that you're seeing on the right-hand side are my gas or plumbing licenses. In 2016, even though I started the business in 2006, I studied, and ended up obtaining a liquid petroleum gas license from the state of Florida, and what we call a master qualifier. The master qualifier can pull permits, but where not necessarily you have to be getting the licenses, you would need to be working with somebody that has the licenses. So that's where we get into, the legislative and legal requirements. I'm a subchapter S corporation. The benefit of becoming a corporation is great in the sense of expenses and basically expenses that are part of the business that you can take off the bottom line. Now, I only worked with Generac as a generator supplier manufacturer, but it doesn't mean that you just have to work with one company. There's Generac, there's Kohler, Briggs and Stratton, Onan, and really, when you are in your plan of deciding what you want to do, it really comes down to the generators that you feel like you'd like to install. Most of what I did was residential versus commercial. Commercial, everything's the same from the point of view of what you need, license and the electrician. But where the difference is, under the commercial plans, you find that they're much more strict in reference to where you put the generator, where you put the gas. And as I mentioned, I'm a gas contractor. And those are basically the two components, gas and electric, that you need to basically take care of it. You want to become in this case, I'm going to use Generac as an example. You want to become, of course, a Generac dealer. And that both affords you a discount on the generators and the ancillary equipment. And one big part, and I didn't even know this when I started the business, I was really stupid, I'm going to be honest. The best part of the business is service. The installations of generators take quite a while, especially with permitting, and you got to meet all the inspectors. You don't really make a lot of money when you add it all together as to the time that it takes to do a generator. But the big thing is you're building a customer base for future streams of revenue because of repair and service. Now, service, basically, generators are like cars. They have a car engine, except Generac has come up with finally in 2019 engines that were built as generator engines. And what's the difference? A car, you drive it to the store, yada, yada, yada. But bottom line with generators, they exercise for 5 minutes, 12 minutes, 20 minutes once a week. And that's only for the engine. And then, all of a sudden, you have a massive power loss and the generator's running for 10 days. Biggest thing that is the benefit of the engines that Generac built is that they have 12 quarts of oil instead of 4. So, especially in Florida, because of the heat, it really, really is hard on the oil. So the more oil you have, the longer you're going to run. Now, if you get low on oil, the generator gets low on oil, it will shut down. Oil pressure gets low. It doesn't hurt the generator. But inevitably, since you're not sitting there in front of the generator all day and all night, it will shut down at 4 o'clock in the morning. So the customer will be saying at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's hot and I want my generator. So that's something that you got to keep in mind. Now, the relationships, I always feel you can work with other dealers, you can work with other providers. It's just ensuring that you know what you're doing, and they're doing, if you're using somebody, they're doing the job the way it should be. Now, I basically ran my business out of my home because most of the work is out in the field. Yes, I had a separate area of a building space that I used as an office. Let's face it, that's the best of both worlds. If you can have an office on site, it doesn't cost you anything. And as you know, if back when I was talking about being a subchapter S corporation, you can write off some of your business or home expenses because it is being used as a business, a certain percentage of that area. So I found over the years, I had a storage space, but when you see they're talking about a showroom and office showcase, this is generally not where people will be coming to your location to look at a new generator like they would go out and look for a new car. So that's important to realize that you're, in most cases, meeting with the customer at their property, showing them what is the right generator for their home and looking for where it can be put, located, and then you work up your pricing. Now, what you're looking at is this picture, because again, as I said, it's a combination of generators and solar. This is a Generac solar inverter for solar panels and a battery system to store excess power. Now, the neat thing in when you're coming up with a marketing plan and advertising, marketing your business, Generac has what we call co-op funds. And those co-op funds help you pay for advertising. So if you want to, let's say if you have a community town newsletter or magazine, and you say, well, let me put an ad in that for the month of August, Generac can help you with some of the fees and costs, typically 50% of what you would be paying to do that. And it really, the good news is with both installations and service and repair, it doesn't take much additional business to basically have it where that has been a good investment. Now, as I said earlier, you do the installation, but you then have the opportunity of servicing that generator if you've done a good job for the customer and you've provided good customer service. They will, in most cases, hire you on an annual basis to make sure their generator is the way it should be. And that's where the money comes in, because if you don't make a lot of money on the installation side, you get it back big time on the service for that unit. There's warranty repair, just routine service like you would with a car, oil and filters. You're on call. And as I said a minute ago, I'm embarrassed because when I started the business, I didn't get the service side until one of my customers said to me, hey, do you do service? And I'm embarrassed to say I went, no, but I can. So I started out at $275 a year to do services. And I sold one of my generator businesses in December, and I was servicing about 150 units on an annual basis, and the typical service plan was $800 a year. So it was very good money. And the neat thing is, you're not limited. You're only limited as to how much you want to work. If you're like, I don't, I want to work 2 days a week, well, this is probably not the right thing for you, because this is a 7-day-a-week job. Are you automatically doing the same thing on weekends that you were doing during the week? No. But generators don't follow weekdays. So if there's a problem, you probably need to go out maybe once or twice on a weekend. But again, remember, you're getting paid to do this, and you've been paid pretty darn well. I had about $100,000 in service agreement dollars, and that could be and I was kind of like the Lone Ranger. But bottom line, it was very easy to say, I'm going to double that, triple that, and I then later years, I basically had somebody helping me do the services. Now, when we talk about quality control and assurance, you do all generator installations with the generator, the electrical, and the gas, which could be either propane or natural gas. Part of the quality control is based on doing the job in reference to the plan that you've submitted to the town or city, because every part of the job is going to be inspected. And I used to say to customers, I will never do anything that I know is wrong, especially with the gas business. You're got explosive gas. Is it dangerous? No, I never had a problem in 18 years, but I did it right. So it's not where you say, well, I'm going to cut some corners. In fact, that's why the permit process is good, even though a lot of folks would argue. But when people are not being inspected, or the jobs are not being inspected, you're going to find that people cheat. And when you cheat on things that are dangerous, you're going to have some problems. So a lot of the quality and the assurance of quality is based on the fact that the whole job is going to be inspected. And I had, the way I structured money, I would collect money as each part of the job was completed. So when the electrical was done, I'd ask for the check for the electrical portion. My own money, since these were my jobs, my dealership, I would not collect the money totally until the job was 100% done and fully inspected. And the other thing I would promise customers was basically, don't think I'm going to ever do something that I hope an inspector is going to miss, because they do sometimes. But you're only hurting yourself and potentially the customer if you, in essence, do that. Now, the neatest thing with the generator business is with Generac, there's a lot of different products. And my initial start was in the generator side. Well, Generac has done a lot of add-on businesses. Another area that is popular is mobile generators. They're made specifically on a trailer by Generac. And, these are where, in some cases, there are businesses that have these, and they say to customers, especially businesses in this case, now that it's hurricane season, because right now this is in July of 2023, they say, hey, let's make sure if you don't have an installed generator, let's have it where we work out a relationship that you will have one of our generators if we get into a power loss and you need to run your business. So that's another good area. Also, when Generac developed their solar side, and quite honestly, and we'll talk about this, generators go with solar hand in hand. It's not where you either do one or the other. The best combination, and we'll get into this, but is where you are doing a smaller generator and you're also doing some solar. So between the generator, the solar panels, the solar batteries, you can basically run quite a lot of power and produce a lot of power. For example, about 8-9 months ago, Generac came out with a very small generator that in Florida we would never use in general, with somebody's just going to have a generator only. But this was a 9 kW DC generator, and the purpose of it was just to charge the batteries when, let's say, for example, with my home, I installed a Generac system. I had a 7 kW system. I had a battery system with 17 kilowatt hours of storage. But in general, what would happen at about 10 o'clock, the batteries would start getting low. It would run on solar during the day when the sun's out. It would charge the batteries during the day, and then it would run the area that I was running on the solar until about 10 o'clock. And then the batteries would get down to 20% and they would shut down, and you then at that time would be pulling 100% from the utility, and that's when it's costing you. Now, this 9 kW is only designed, and this is really the best of both worlds. Anything you're running on solar with your panels and batteries, if you've got this 9 kW hooked up, it's called AC coupling or DC coupling. It says, okay, the batteries are low. I need to charge the batteries. So it does that, but at the same time, everything runs. So the neatest thing is you have perpetual power. From whatever you're running is going to have some form of your own power 24/7. And you generally won't have to pull very much power from the grid. And in fact, you probably, which I did, is the meters that go in when you have your solar installed, they go both ways. If you don't have a system, your meter is just bringing power into your home. But with a solar system, they put a different meter in that goes both ways. The power that you're bringing in from the grid and the power that you are sending to the grid. And I did have my system where I wasn't really looking to personify grid power, but you do, depending on how much you send, you do get, credits every month on your electric bill in reference to the amount that you've sent to them. Okay, this is the first part of it where I'm saying if you are thinking of doing a business in reference to generators, solar, do a little homework. You'll be much better off. And, you know, I'm going to extend myself big time to help those that need help. Because, as I said back at the beginning of the presentation, 2006 was the worst time in my life. So I would like to spare you from this happening. Thank you. Subscribe to the channel. And again, I'll be doing the more nitty gritty, which I enjoy, of the actual practice and the process of getting it done. And again, thank you very much. Jim Whitehead, All Power Group.